welcome to the Community Preservation Committee meeting of Tuesday, February 13th. This meeting's being recorded. We will start by having an introduction of the members who are in attendance. Diane, I'll start with you, if you would.
Diane Proctor, Select Board appointee, present.
Thank you. John.
I'm John Kratzley, a Select Board appointee.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you, John. Sue.
Sue Falshin, Planning Board appointee. Long time no see. Happy New Year.
Yeah, same. Yeah. Eve.
Eve Eisenberg, Select Board appointee.
Thanks. Edward.
Edward Larner, Housing Authority appointee.
Thank you. And I'm Burton Flint, Select Board appointee. It has been a while. It's good to see all you together again. And I know that many of you are hopping over from the MassDOT briefing on our Route 2 roadway. So I appreciate you joining over. We have a relatively limited agenda tonight, but it should merit some good discussion. The first thing would be the CPC plan updates. And I know Anne circulated a copy of our plan, which we look at. We're required to update or assess every 5 years, but this committee makes a habit of assessing it and updating it on an annual basis. And we've previously received some comments that came in through Ed on the housing section. I believe the planning, Sue, the planning board, we got some feedback from Elizabeth that there was no feedback coming from them. There was sort of specific substantive. I think there's probably some dates and things in there that might be updated. And I had a couple comments. And Keith, we did receive your feedback, and I noted your comment that you made just before the meeting. There was a PDF that was posted which included Keith's comments coming from the Concord Housing from the trust. Sorry, the CHA, whatever the acronym is, Keith. That you run so ably with your comments. I did get the Word document and have been through your full comments that you provided. So I saw the things in the margin that weren't picked up in the PDF. So with that, I think I just opened the discussion. I'm wondering what's the best way to go through this with respect to keeping track of any comments or edits that anybody may have to the plan. This is oftentimes easier when we're in person and we can present it up on a screen and we work through it as a group. But Anne, I don't know if you wanted to present the plan. We could go through it page by page, which might be a lengthy process, or maybe if folks just wanted to comment on any sections that they had specific comments on. Maybe that's the best approach, or we might be here for most of the night. Well, I'll kick it off to say, Anne, our plan is a really good document. One of the things I noticed, having gone through it before this, is that it is heavy on numbers, and numbers always get out of date. And so I assume that you're in a position to sort of go through and update things like references to the latest housing production plan, references throughout to, for example, the number of affordable units in town, or the number of, there's a lot of information that needs to be updated as a result of the 2020 census updating from 2010, and so on and so forth. Or is that something that you can take the lead on in terms of making the updates to those numbers throughout?
Sure. Yes, I can do that. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I've marked up the PDF with a number of just quick comments on those kinds of things to catch. Diane, you've got your hand raised.
And that was my comment as well, Burton, is there just seems some numbers that needed updating, some dates that needed updating. So I think if those are attended to, and I know Anne does that beautifully, the document will be, to my eye, a more effective one. Thank you.
Okay, great. I noticed I'll just take the lead and note some particular comments I had. In the overview, it talks about the CPA, the funds being used to acquire open space, preserve open space, acquire and preserve historic resources, and support community housing. Oh, actually, no. Now that I read it for the third time, I see it does actually reference recreational use. My comment was going to be what about recreational use? Because I know that that's been sort of a subcategory. So ignore that comment. There was a comment in community housing talking about in the introductory sort of the needs section on community housing that says through zoning amendments made at town meeting over the years, Concord has become zoned almost exclusively for single family residences. And while that's
Yes.
remains predominantly true, we've made some real headway. And Sue, I don't know if you would have any particular suggestions around some of the two-family housing and accessory dwelling unit stuff that's been made. I think that statement was really true 10 years ago and is significantly less true today.
Well, it
Just a
would be
thought.
fair to change it from almost exclusively to either, well, to largely.
Significantly, largely.
I
Right.
would go above significantly, because at the moment, two-family is only allowed in residence C and only by special permit. It's still a heavy lift, and the ADUs are fairly well restricted. And also,
Though
it
that
depends on if we're looking at land area. I would still say almost exclusively, but
is the planning board bringing forward this year some stuff to expand the
we are. But to residence B for two-family, again by special permit, but it is not yet passed, and so it is
Okay.
still fair to not mention
Okay.
that this
Okay.
year. Right?
Well, and my comment then, I guess, would be that last sentence of the first paragraph on page 12. We might want to have a little bit of a tweak, because I think there has been some forward progress there with respect to other housing models. This
And it will
whole
also change if we pass MBTA community zoning. It will
right
also have an impact, but again, hasn't happened.
hasn't happened, of course. This whole, I would comment, and that this whole housing section is very heavy on numbers and reference to specific projects, and 2010 census numbers. I would I I I won't make it sound better than it is. I think it'll be a lot of work to update a lot of the a lot of those things. So Keith's comments, and thank you for those. I addressed some of those items. I also addressed some of the substantive updates around the trust. But things like the AMI, excuse me, limits in the table on page 14 would need to be updated. Just throughout, all of those things I think need to be updated. On page
Uh,
15,
Can we
yes,
just address one thing? I
yes,
agree
please.
I agree with Sue. I mean, when I read that line, I thought, well, eventually that's not going to be so true. I mean, it's going to be significant, but it's not going to be disproportionate single family. But until certain acts are passed, the MBTA and the expansion of the two family, we really are a single family zoning community. So I just would tend to agree with Sue. And I mean, eventually, let's hope we can say that somewhat differently. But
Fair enough. I mean, having been part of the committee at the time, we did the two family and the accessory dwelling unit. I wanted to show
some progress.
some forward progress, but
Very well said.
but at the same time, I appreciate that we probably only generated maybe about 10 to 20 units of housing in town through those changes as to date, and most of them are in West Concord.
Or duplexes. So there's
Or
more ADUs, but it's only been 4 duplexes.
right, and they all seem to be right there on Conan, right? The next thing I was going to say on page 15, there's a reference to state-owned land, and that talks about the preservation of I believe, well, it says that talked about the preservation or the conveyance of 12 acres land that I guess was owned by the Department of Corrections, the Concord Housing Development Corporation. Is it ripe to speak of potential opportunities with the MCI Concord closing? I know that the governor's budget has not yet passed, but I think that seems to be moving forward. Just a thought.
Um,
Diane or Sue? Sorry, I'm jumping between the document and my screen, so I don't see when hands come up.
Again,
So,
I see that as premature. I mean, a year
Okay.
from now, yes, but I mean, I think, we've still got a lot of roads, so to speak. A lot of roads to cross. I think before we are able to say more than that.
okay.
And also the town manager, or is it assistant town manager, has asked that everything be coordinated through them. So if we wanted to change something, we would have to run it by them to get their approval of whatever we said, if we were going to respect that request.
Well, I mean, this is pretty general. I appreciate that, Sue, and I sure hope the town acts with one voice on it. But I think this is pretty general. It's just talking about there's many opportunities for housing, and one of those might be this line that was conveyed back in whenever that was done. I think my thought was, this is something we got to start thinking about. But I also appreciate the fact that it's not yet come out of the oven.
And this is also not a laundry list, since there are other state-owned land parcels that people have talked about the possible conveyance of, which
Yes,
hasn't happened.
Absolutely.
Well,
Background on Route 2, but go ahead.
Well, and that brings me to the next paragraph, which mentions a 2-acre parcel on Sandy Pond Road. Is that still relevant? I don't know whether these things, when I was reading this, I wasn't sure if some of these things had been in there for 10 years or went into the last draft. And I don't know the history of that parcel.
Well, my sensibility is that would, Ed, you want to answer that?
Well, I believe it. I believe it's visible when you're driving along Route 2, and they seem to be using that for storage. There's culvert, stuff there and stuff like that. And I haven't heard anyone talk about this, on that specific piece of property lately. What's been, the most news in the last few years, of course, is the Junction Village land. And that, I believe, is the 17 acres that Burton was talking about.
Yeah, that's referenced.
And I'm going to ask Keith to talk about the fluidity of what's going on right now, not just about the prison and so forth, but I know that the Regional Housing Services Office, or no, the CDHC has delayed, putting out bids for the Junction Village. But is it okay to have Keith speak about all the things? Because I think the housing production plan that just came out this year, it looks like we're gonna have some changes on that for next year's. So I mean, I thought maybe we could look at that. Housing is quite active right now. So
Yeah, and I think that, well, I don't have any further comments to the draft other than to acknowledge the input that Keith had until we get to historic preservation. So before I just ask Keith to jump in, maybe if he's got any specific comments, as you mentioned, do any other committee members have any comments to the housing section? Okay, so Keith, thanks again for your input.
Yeah, thanks very much. And I think Ed has the right approach to what can we say about MCI Concord? And I think the official answer is nothing yet, in part because when we look at the housing production plan, it doesn't mention MCI Concord as a potential place for housing. And if it goes forward and if housing is one of the uses, one of the first things we'd want to do is amend that document, amend that housing plan document to be able to include it. That could mean all sorts of other things there, but the rest of it is speculative. I think we're looking at a 1.4 acre piece of surplus state property at 91B Main Street, which is not proceeding either yet. But I think the chair is correct that updating your plan to reflect the most recent census and the most recent subsidized housing inventory figures is key. And I think there are some broad themes that are contained in the housing production plan update from a year ago that might better substitute, talking about projects, old projects that aren't a thing anymore in your plan. So thanks for the
Right.
opportunity to comment.
Yeah, thank you. Well, so that though you mentioned the parcel of acre and a half parcel at 91B Main Street. Should we be talking about that because we've got this mention of the Sandy Pond Road parcel? Just generally, I asked the question because what I want to make sure is that this doesn't end up containing a bunch of language that, there was something in there that was maybe being looked at, like I said, 10 years ago, but now we're talking about a different parcel.
Perhaps the answer would be, we can share with you, and I think we have shared with you what the update, the trust update to the Concord Housing Roundtable in December showed what the list of priority projects is for implementing production strategies in the housing production plan. And it's, Assabet River Bluff, it's Junction Village, it's the 91B Main Street, and contributing to the Novo 40B waiver, the cost of waiving the affordable units sewer improvement fee, and some other specific projects. So that's sort of the universe as it looks right now. It's probably going to get amended by the end of the summer, depending upon what comes out of if the legislation about MCI Concord passes. I think we'll have we'll certainly want to put that on our collective radar screens.
Okay, so Anna, I guess what I would ask is, so you we've got the feedback from Keith. I think Keith, you've touched on some of those priorities in your comments coming back, specific to the state-owned land parcel that I was asking about around Sandy Pond Road versus the one at 91B Main Street. Is there anything going on with that Sandy Pond Road parcel? Should this still be in our report as something that's we're identifying as being suitable for future housing? Or should we be talking about 91B Main Street, or neither?
91B Main Street is on our radar screen. The other one isn't.
Okay. So maybe if it's on your general radar screen, I mean, and maybe that paragraph comes out because sorry to be so focused on one sentence, but it just seemed as something that it was maybe old news or no longer. It was stale news, I guess I should say. Eve, yes, you've got your hand raised. Thanks.
Oh, I'm not sure this is appropriate or not, because I'm not exactly sure who the audience is for the community preservation plan, but I wonder if one of the appendices could be the trust's report or the trust's plan. We seem to have a lot of other documents in there, and then we could avoid this problem in the future that you've brought up, Burton, of having like little random pieces of land mentioned in our plan that we'd have to go back and scrub and figure out what happened with that. But if most of our money we decided is going through the trust or through, CHDC, maybe we could attach the reports as appendices to our plan.
Yeah, I mean, that would certainly, I mean, we make reference to the housing production plan. So for example, and Keith, who owns the housing production plan? I mean, who's responsible for producing that?
That is adopted by the select board and the planning board jointly and approved by the state, which is why if it's not complete, I mean, and I'm serious about this, if CI Concord becomes the thing, then we need to amend that housing production plan, even if informally, just so that it's on our radar screen.
I see. I mean, maybe we should be having that as the and maybe you and I can work together to see where can we take out some of the specific details that will continuously come up as requiring an update year to year, and instead reference the housing production plan, which is its own living document, it sounds like, based upon how Keith describes it.
One other suggestion, though,
yeah,
I could. There is a matrix that the trust maintains and updates in coordination with the Housing Roundtable, and that is, here are the list of priority projects. That changes over time. It might make sense to have the most recent version of that included as an appendix. It would just be, you know, it'd be half of a page or something, but it might be a useful way to just describe what are the current projects.
Is
Yeah,
that, yes, Diane?
No, I was just gonna say, I think that's exactly what needs to happen. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a very compressed and I think very clear document that shows us the order in which the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust Fund is thinking about projects. And I find it a very helpful document. So I think attaching it to ours is a prudent decision.
And Eve, that probably goes towards what you're getting at. It's rather than us having
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay. There's a call-in user that has their hand raised. If you'd like to unmute.
This is Linda Escobedo. How are you?
Hey, we're good, Linda. Thanks.
Hey.
Good. I'm following this discussion, and what I would like to suggest is that in the body of the CPC plan itself, under housing, that at least we capture there the current priorities as identified in the housing production plan, as opposed to just referencing it in the appendix. Because what happens is people will zero in on that the housing narrative in the CPC plan, and if they don't at least have some meat there, I guess, to wrap their hands around, you can't count on the fact that they're going to go to the appendix. So that would just be my comment there.
And is that what you've just described, Keith, is essentially a list of current priorities?
Yes, in fact, I'm going to show it to you just so we're all on the same page of what it is. And this is it.
I mean, so
This is the list we're working off of right now.
right. And so I guess if there's a point in time where that's you think that's ready for prime time, you know, I appreciate it. Sounds like it's sort of a living document, but maybe the answer to this, Diane and Eve, would be to drop this into our document so that there's sort of one reference that says the current priorities that the committee is, you know, consider supporting are, boom, and put this in just so that we're not doing updates up and down throughout the document in accord, you know, as Linda's suggesting, to include this directly.
Yeah, that would be good. Is it okay to take that information, Keith, and put it into the format that fits our plan?
You bet. I'll email the PDF file to Ann. I mean the PowerPoint file to Ann.
Okay, great.
My only
Thank you.
concern is that we haven't, you know, as a committee, we haven't voted on this priority. I mean, that's the reason
No,
I thought that was better as a footnote. I mean, I think in fact, if we did, we'd probably agree with it. But the
well,
point is,
yeah, and I think we've got to.
So I'm sorry, never mind. Go ahead.
Well, I think one of the things is that, I mean, it's how we introduce this, right? I think we say that the committee supports the efforts of the trust and the CHDC and so forth, and for reference, the current housing production plan priorities are the following, right? I mean, we haven't discussed it, and maybe we don't want to endorse it per se, but I think we're endorsing I think we're saying that the committee will be supporting these other town committees, and these are their current priorities. I don't know.
Yeah, Burton, that's the reason I think it should be in a footnote. And Linda, I totally respect you always, but I totally respect your notion that people might not go to the footnote. But I think that because it's not been a source of discourse on the part of our committee, and that's only to be concerned about the future. I mean, if another committee were put together, congealed, and they said, wait, we think that the acquiring of the 91B property is more important than Junction Village. I mean, I can't imagine that happening, but let's say that did, or that, a CHDC buy down program was more important. I mean, in other words, we've not really had a chance to flesh this out. with Keith. I've listened to them talk about it and much persuaded by the way in which they presented this, but I don't think our committee has. And so I think as a footnote, it seems more appropriate, just from a committee jurisdiction point of view, but that's just maybe a little picky and not important. So everybody else
No,
decide.
I think those are wise words. I think, Diane, I don't think it's picky or unimportant, because putting it in our report suggests the endorsement. And if we haven't had a discussion about it, then we're not really in a position to endorse, right?
Mhm.
As a committee. So, but referencing that these are the priority projects so that it's included in the sort of the larger report. Whether it be an appendix or footnoted, as you said, that seems reasonable. Eve?
I was just going to say that we have a section in our plan describing what the trust does. And if this is a concise way of showing what the trust's priorities are, and we're discussing in our plan what the trust is, perhaps that's a good compromise, that's the section where this information might go. Just showing, giving some meat without saying that this is what the town is doing. Do you think that's confusing, Diane, that people might think that this is CPA only work if it's in the trust section of our plan?
Well, I don't know. I just think that being careful about not not endorsing a proposal without having had a discussion about it, it seems to me is dicey. We work cheek by jowl, obviously, with 2 or 3 housing committees, so that we can make decisions. So we can make decisions that are prudent and support the good work of those committees as we go forward. But I think we just need to be careful. That's all. So I'm not sure.
This is Linda. Can you hear me?
Yes, I would respect.
Yes, we can, Linda.
Thinking. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I can't tell if my hand is still up or what the situation is here. So again, I appreciate the good contributions from everybody. I just thought of one other item related to this, and I don't have the document in front of me, so forgive me if I'm misremembering. But usually, as an introduction to the sections, there will be a reference to the documents that are being relied on for that section, like Envision Concord, et cetera, the major reports. Do you know what I'm referring?
I don't think there's sort of a reference table per se, but throughout the document, we reference both the housing production plan and the Envision Concord 2018 plan.
Okay, and I could be misremembered. I just thought there was a section where they did, or at least just a list of what the major documents were pertinent to whether it was community housing or open space or et cetera. And since this document has been accepted by the planning board and the select board and approved by the state, that should at least appear in that list of wherever those documents show up. That's all I'm suggesting. So again, thank you everyone for your comments.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry, Burton, I think she's referring to page 12, right in the middle there. There's the list of documents that we are relying on, needs and resources assessment. Maybe that's what she's talking about.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah. And that list that would need to be updated, I think, to the current version of the housing production plan, and maybe that community, and we'll need to look at each of those documents to see if there's more up-to-date versions. I know 2018 Envision Concord is the latest long-range plan, but I'm not sure about the others. And maybe what we can do is generally looking at this housing section, just because it's so heavy in numbers, we can see if there's sections that we could reference these external documents with and have less specific references in the plan. We'll see. I don't mean to make any drastic changes, but
No.
My next comment came in historic preservation, and Diane, maybe this is sort of a question for you. I was wondering about, do we want to be talking about Concord 2025 in this section? I don't, in terms of something that we would be focused on in the next couple of funding cycles.
That's a really interesting question, Burton. I didn't, as you know, I had pneumonia, so I kind of missed a couple of our meetings. So I don't know. I don't know. I mean, clearly the support of the trees program was a clear gesture to the two. And if you think that making that, so in that discussion, was there a discussion by the committee that said that we think that the support of the 250, of the ongoing work of the 250 is something the CPC needs to acknowledge? I don't know. I mean, I wasn't part of that discussion.
Well, I know I made some comments about when we were talking about funding priorities that I had said that I would anticipate that there will be projects, that would be historic or perhaps open space in nature, as the trees were. I think that was, I can't remember if that ended up being both, that were driven by the Concord 2025 plan, and that we would anticipate maybe seeing some more of those. We've got, within the section of the historic preservation opportunities, there's a number of things that are listed, archival collections, unprotected historic sites, agricultural lands, and I would just throw it out to you whether you think it would merit,
The only one that I can think of as having listened to the various kind of plans for the 250, Burton, but I don't know everything, but I've certainly, as a communication person, we've been kind of following all the iterations, is in the monument planning, and whether there is, some effort, because it really is an historical gesture, whether they would come to the CPC and ask for support. I don't know that we need to put an emphasis on that syllable, because I think it will have its own merits and weight. So
Okay.
I don't know. That's up to that's up to everybody else. But I don't think I think it would be so obvious that. So never mind.
I mean, listen, I think this is a really good summary of the historic preservation, and maybe you had a hand in updating this last year, a good summary of the things that we have in Concord generally. And perhaps we don't need to put anything in specific to the how do you say it, Diane? The bicentennial, whatever it is.
Sesquicentennial.
That's who.
There you go.
There we go. Celebration. Okay, another couple of small comments that I had in that section, and on in the middle of page 19, it talks. There's a listing of things that the town has come to the rescue of or exercise stewardship over, a number of projects, and it lists out Barrett's Farmhouse, Thoreau Birth House, 141 Kais Road, Harvey Wheeler, Hunt Gym, and restoration of the Cesar Robbins House. That is a list that maybe we should look at some of our recent historic preservation projects and see if that could be updated. Some of those are on the older side of projects that the committee has been involved in. And I don't know if there are any really recent ones in there, like, I'm thinking of the Masonic Lodge or different things like that are more recent in time, or the First Parish clock, or the Wright Tavern.
Okay. Also, if we leave the Robbins House in the list, it's the Robbins House, but it's not actually the Cesar Robbins House.
Oh, is that the case?
Yeah, never lived in it. That was failure of research, but it's a great place with much wonderful history connected with it.
There we go. Well, then absolutely, let's make that correction. So that's in the middle of page 19. And one other thing that jumped out at me on page 19, that last paragraph, it says Concord is also home to 8 religious institutions that own their own facilities. I don't know if anybody's out there regularly counting up the number of religious institutions in Concord. I'd almost just say maybe we should say several religious institutions that own their own facilities, in case we get that number wrong and somebody is not counted.
Right. Okay, that's a good idea.
The next
one comment.
Yes, please.
Having just toured the Wright Tavern recently with Tom Wilson, there may be an effort. He may come back to us for some resources, for some money. And so I didn't see anything in the prose that suggested that was now a done deal and they'd never ask again. But I want to make sure that to anybody else's eye, it doesn't read that way. I don't know what's going to happen, and I don't know whether we'd fund it. I'm not making any prognostications, but I was interested to hear the questions that I was asked about, possible needs. So
Oh, so sort of outside of the discussion of the plan, was there any discussion about we're cutting off the right tavern?
I didn't think so, but I just wanted to make sure that at least as the document as I read it didn't seem to suggest, well, that's done. Now what's on to the next? But I just wanted to heads up. There may be.
Yeah, I don't recall that. I think the only time we've had any discussion like that I recall, it was sort of around the Emerson Field renovations, which kept coming back for more and more
Okay.
each time. I don't recall anything like that around Wright Tavern.
I didn't think so, but I just thought I'd mention.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm convinced it will be a good investment up until we actually reopen a tavern in there, which is what would be my long-term goal.
So that's the plan. Did you know that? I mean,
What?
oh yeah, it's planned to be a tavern. Absolutely. They've even got the people who are going to serve the food and the drinks and everything else. I mean, the whole thing is moving forward as a real tavern right now. And
Are you
But
saying
will
that
they-
for this celebration or on an ongoing
but they
basis?
hope to have it ready by the celebration, actually.
But will they serve historically appropriate hard cider, or will they just be another stupid, inaccurate tavern that only serves beer?
No, that's a very good question. I think they have all sorts of drinks that were integral to and reflective of the original drinks. I don't have all the fun nomenclature that goes with it, but that is what they're planning. So
Well, that's spectacular. I think we need a good tavern in town, and it would be nice if it was in the
Guess
right
what?
tavern.
I think that might
Yeah.
become. I don't imagine
So
kitchens with burgers being flipped. I mean, it would be more like a cafe Nero in the sense of ready-made, food like that. But
I see.
surely the tavern notion, and they've recovered an old tavern bar and all sorts of things. So it's very interesting.
As long as it's a place that you can go and get a little tipsy and discuss the next revolution,
It is
and
absolutely a place you're going to be able to do that. And I think everything we've done, we should all meet there and do it. So
there we go. The League of Women's Voters is going to raise the roof, right?
no, that's not what I said.
Okay. The next comment I had was in the open space intro on page 23. There's another line, the second sentence in there, and maybe a couple of other sentences looks like they probably need to be updated because it's got these specific numbers about the number of land that's been conserved and so forth. And certainly with, like, for example, Assabet Bluffs, that number is, unless those numbers were updated last year, might be out of date. Then the reference to the 2015 open space and recreation plan, I have a failure of memory. Did they just update that, or did they just get funding to update the recreation plan for a new one?
They
I
just got
think it's
funded. Yeah. They
Just got funded. Okay,
Right.
so
Right.
the references to the 2015 plan remain valid for the time being. Okay. There is a reference talking about the prison on page 26. There's a reference to that the town may be interested in selling the prison farmland, which I think is not actually of interest to the state, but obviously, I mean, and this is future looking language. So maybe here is where we might mention the MCI Concord and replace the reference to the prison farm. I guess maybe the reason that was referenced was because it was in the long range plan. I'd be surprised if that was in the 2018 long range plan. I don't recall that, but maybe we could change that to MCI Concord there since it is forward looking.
Well, we could, but this is under open space, and MCI Concord can get
very well
thrown
be.
in under absolutely anything and everything.
Sure.
From what I've heard, the farm is not going to be part of the MCI turnover.
No, it's
Right,
not.
which is my sort of point exactly, which is that we're referencing, so a couple things. We're referencing in the open space section that the state may be interested in selling the prison farmland, which I don't think is true. I also think that the large majority of that farmland has been preserved under a state statute for farming. And so actually it probably would not be within the scope of something that the town would be buying to preserve as open space because it's already preserved for agricultural use by law. I think under 2007 Act. And if we're talking about, if we're making any reference to potentially acquiring surplus state land, it shouldn't be to the state farm, but it should be to MCI Concord. That was my view. But if we all think we should just stay quiet on that, sit on our hands for another year, I'm happy to do that. But I think we should probably get rid of this reference to buying prison farmland because that's definitely not on the table. And I don't think there's any intention for that.
I missed that line entirely. Eve, do you have a comment?
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say exactly that, Burton, that maybe the conservative thing to do is to take out number 4, completely renumber them and stay mum about the MCI for now.
Fair enough. I mean, it does talk, there's this other state, there's a catch-all in number 5 of state and federal public lands. So maybe we do that because I don't think 4 is very accurate. And I'm going to guess the reference to the long range plan is probably from the prior 10-year long range plan because I don't recall that being part of the 2018 Envision Concord plan. Does that make sense, Anne?
Yes, that's right.
We don't have the benefit of Paul on, and my next comment was in the recreation section. We don't have the benefit of Paul this evening, but I would note that the section 9 on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail should be updated. It talks about design and engineering phase for the bridge. Of course, that is now done, and we are now in the construction phase of phase 2. Is it D? I guess it's 2D. Is it D? I think it's 2D. So that section 9 at the bottom of page 30 would need to be updated. I bet Elizabeth would have the sort of the latest correct references on that. Once we get into the general selection criteria, I don't think really anything changed there. It really needed to be updated, at least not that I saw. And by the way, if anybody has any comments as I go along, because I'm jumping between the document and being able to see you guys, please just type up. But my next comment was on page 35, which is the excerpt of the act itself, and that says it includes all amendments through July 2021. And I guess it would just make sense to check the Mass General laws to see if that had been updated after July 2021.
Okay.
To make sure we've got the latest version attached. And for me, let's see. Oh, and Appendix 3 looks like it had sort of a report for 2021 and a report for 2022. I guess would it be maybe we get rid of the 2021? It looks like the format before was to have 2 years worth of reports, naming the committee members. And I am guessing, Diane, that you wrote the report for one of these years, if not both of the years, because you were.
Anne wrote and I edited.
Okay. So is the idea then, Anne, we just need to provide a new report for 2023 and maybe drop the 2021? So we have a 2-year window? Is that the?
I'm not totally following you because I don't have it in front of me, but
Okay.
I'm
So
sure.
so to be clear, there's an appendix number 3, which has annual reports attached to it. And it's got an annual report for 2021 that lists the committee members at that time.
Right. Okay. I remember now.
And then it goes through what the projects were for that year. And then there is another report that was, well, actually, I guess it's one report, but it also mentions the 2022 CPC members and a funding recommendation. It's actually sort of significantly simpler. It just goes through the numbers instead of naming the specific projects, but then it's followed by the town meeting articles for 2021 2021 and 2022. So I was wondering was that intentional that we keep 2 years worth, or should we just have the current year in there?
Maybe just the current year. Makes sense.
That
Yeah,
makes
and people
logical
can look
sense
it-
to me.
Right, and people can look it up too. I mean, it's
Yeah.
easily accessed, right?
Sure.
If it's not if we drop it from the CPC plan, people will still have access to it in the annual reports.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay. And I like the format that was done for 2022, which seems to be to just say, here are the committee members, and here is our article, and here is it's probably, I'm guessing, almost like the handout, the town meeting handout that describes each project. It looks like. Anyway, and you and I can work together to update that for 2023 and to replace the 2 prior reports that are in there.
Sounds good.
Appendix 6 is conditions placed on funded projects. And it says, as voted on at the 2022 annual meeting. So I guess we need to come up with a list of conditions that were put on the projects that were approved in 2023. So that would be going back to the trust or the grant documents and listing out the conditions.
Okay.
Okay. Essentially, all those appendices just need to be updated to the current year. Like appendices 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. I think it is. That's all the comments I had on the plan. Did anybody else have any comments that they wanted to weigh in on their section or the plan generally? Sue, are you petting your cat or waving your hand? Petting your cat.
Cat, good thing I had the sound off. He's loud.
Okay. Edward.
I just want to thank Keith for being here to explain all the housing things going on. I guess we spent a majority of our time here, but the municipal, housing. Here I go copying Burton on this, but the municipal affordable housing trust is really an important change, and the work that Keith has done has made things a lot better. Yesterday, we had an open house at the unit. We were able to. It was the project that we had put in for next fiscal year, and because of the coordination and collaboration between everybody here, on this committee with Burton, and then with Keith, and then with Rick Eifler, we were able to get the funding instantly when a unit became available, and it's going to be rented very soon. So we're about 15 months ahead on these things. And just my point is that I feel that the housing roundtable is a good place for a CDC person to be there. And at the last one in December, I stood up and talked about no, it wasn't at the housing roundtable. It was at the trust meeting last time, and talked about kind of represented the CPC, even though I didn't have a permission to do that, but I just went through what had happened, and I think the CPC should be part of that roundtable. So.
Yeah, and Edward, I don't think you. You are essentially are the housing representative on the CPC. I don't think you need to think about whether or not you have permission. In fact, you sort of have the obligation, if I may, to try to make sure that the CPC has both its ear to what the housing committees are doing, and also perhaps conveying what the CPC is doing to those committees. I mean, that's the whole point of having the liaison. So please don't feel constrained in that. And I have attended a couple of those, unfortunately, with work schedule. That oftentimes with the timing being at 5 o'clock on a weekday, I'm often not available that early in the day. So I'm often not able to make it. But by all means, you're our man on the street.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
Just wanted to thank Keith again. So he's really doing a great job.
Eve. Yeah.
just to back to something a little bit more boring. I'm noticing in the appendices that there's appendix 6 that you were talking about, Burton, that ends on 58, or no, starts on 59. And then the next appendix seems to be appendix 11, which is not listed in the table of contents. So I'm just going to stand up and volunteer to, once you and Anne go through this, to put a third set of eyes to all of the stupid stuff like that. I could be the Sue Felshin for this run.
Sue. Oh, that's a backhanded compliment. Yeah, okay, that would be lovely. Thank you, Eve.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, we want to have those in order, for sure. You would think my day job would make me good at that kind of thing, but I'm horrific at that kind of thing. Okay, if I may, the next thing on our agenda, just getting back to it, was the procedures manual. Now, we were provided by Anne a red line of this procedures manual, which was largely redlined to do things like reflect the coming dates for 2024 in terms of submission deadlines and the like. But the bulk of the procedures manual, I don't think, requires substantive updates of any sort. It's just mainly the dates and the names. And you went through and obviously did a lot of work. First, I guess the first question would be are there other things you think we need to discuss? And also, do we need to look at those dates and consider them as a committee?
And you're muted.
Yep.
The only other thing that I really spent time updating was the financial procedures, because the town of Concord has a new financial system, and which just requires us as staff to do things differently. And we just want to sort of communicate that to the applicants and the awardees. But other than that, I don't think that there was much that needed to be updated. I think we requested like a W-9 form or something now on the application.
Right.
But yeah,
and when you talk about the financial procedures, what I saw was generally, instead of referencing that things would go through the finance department, that they would be submitted to the town, sort of more high level and more general. It wasn't anything too particular. I can't remember if in the past we've talked about dates that we want to, because I think you had put in there, and I've got to reopen it. Give me 1 second. Minutes. Let me get to the page that I think had the dates.
I think it's a 10.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, okay. They're just general date ranges. So let's see. Public information sections. We've got April 23rd, May 14th, 2024. Deadlines. I feel like in the past, this committee has sat here and sort of worked on each one of these dates. I don't feel particularly strongly about them, given that we've got so much advance warning. Does anybody else want to discuss the dates, or if they've seen the dates that Anne has put in, do they make sense? Essentially, for the most part, she's just flipping from 2023 to 2024 and then finding the closest, to the degree it's stated a specific date, finding the closest, I guess, probably equivalent calendar week.
It's hard to know, isn't it? I mean, at least I don't know if anybody else has their next year all planned, but
I certainly don't.
I'm trying to.
I mean, I just sort of hope for the best that we're landing it within the same dates, plus or minus. Well, like for example, we're still in the third week of September for site visits. That we've got the application deadline about 14 days prior to that, and so forth. I mean, it all makes sense to me, and I don't think we need to go through it with a fine-tooth comb and look at calendars and coordinate with weddings or whatnot. But I think unless anybody has any comments, I'm good with the changes.
So I actually do have a question, and I meant to look this up in my calendar. The third week of September is the 14th, 15th, or is it what are we saying, the 21st, 22nd? Does anybody remember?
Well, what she's got here for it is application deadline is the 13th of September, site visits the 28th.
Oh, good. Okay. Because you said wedding and I suddenly thought, oh my gosh, I never checked. Okay, we're fine.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
So then I don't have any other changes to the procedures manual. And I have looked at all your red lines. They seem to fine to me.
I will just note that right at the meeting started, I emailed Anne with half a dozen picayune little things about formatting and so forth. I was trying to be the Eve Eisenberg of this committee.
Well played. Well played.
Oh, Sue, you're the best. We can only hope to be like you.
Mm.
Okay.
I love this.
Um,
Oh my God.
Thank you, Sue. And knowing the quality of your work, I don't think it needs to be reviewed, and if you would incorporate those things, that would be great.
Of course.
That then brings us, unless anybody has any further comments on that document, hearing none, to minutes, I believe. Let me just double check the agenda. Are we in that? And was that the next thing? I just want to make sure I'm not skipping
There
something.
was if you
Oh,
want
review of
to-
open projects.
Right, review of open projects.
Right. And I guess this review, the emails you had sent me suggested that we are lacking the full information we really need to review open projects because of the change in town finance systems. We don't have our numbers, right?
Correct. We don't have the numbers from the finance department or division. But we
Okay.
do have the list of projects. So if there are particular projects that you'd like information on, I'll be sending out the reminders soon to all of the grantees to let them know that we're looking for their annual reports. So I can add particular questions if you'd like.
Do you have a list of open projects that you could put on the screen?
Yes.
While we're waiting for that, Sue, you've got your hand raised?
I was only going to comment, maybe this is because of the change in how the finances are handled, but I find it very confusing when something has zeros in every column: beginning balance, amount expended, amount encumbered, and amount unencumbered and unspent. It can't all be zeros.
Because you're looking at the actual the project summary, right? Okay. Maybe we can get an explanation on that. And also, Ed, you've got your hand raised.
Just a question about the Warner Pond letter that Ann sent around to everybody. I don't even know if you want to talk about it in an open meeting, but do we want to respond to that gentleman's comments?
I took a brief look at the letter. It's not on the agenda for discussion tonight. But I mean, I don't think it's necessarily germane to any business we had for tonight. It seemed to be making a point about the use of funds, which we've discussed at prior meetings, which funds can be used for dredging and which were granted that were not restricted just for dredging. I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, I just thought, since we were talking about open funding.
Yeah.
Well, Ed,
Yeah.
you ask a good question, and he's followed that up. Miguel has followed that up with a notion that what has been described as certain kind of stuff in the pond is actually sand rather than the kind of mud that was anticipated. So, I mean, there's a lot going on. There is a Warner's, I know everybody knows this, but there is a Warner's Pond now advisory committee. And I think this all falls really under their purview while we await their adjudication of the future of the pond, is my sensibility, but.
Yeah, and I don't think the committee has any misunderstanding or disagreement with natural resources, the Natural Resources Department on what our funding can be used for versus whether it be for dredging versus another purpose. We've talked about that previously, and I think we are of one mind with the Natural Resources Director. So.
I mean, specifically, that means the funds are for dredging.
The first, I believe there were 3 grants and the first 2 were specific to dredging.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. That's my recollection, but keep in mind that was over a course of grant cycles, which now takes us back about 5 years. So 5 or 6 years. So it's been a little while, but
Work for dredging, because I went back and looked at it before we had a League Warner's Pond event, and they were for dredging, but the point is that we have to see whether that's still going to go forward. We don't know. And if it's
Right.
not going to go forward, then there's going to have to be a reassignment of those resources for something else. So
you're saying all 3 were for dredging? I thought we
I
made a
said 2.
third.
No, I said 2 were for dredging. I'm sorry if I
Yeah,
misspoke.
okay.
I
Okay,
did,
yeah.
sorry if I misspoke. I meant to say 2.
So no, we're on that. Then my recollection is in accord. Okay. So this is a list of our current projects. You know, in times past, sometimes we've looked at these to see, you know, projects that have been sitting out there for a long time that we want an update on. And this list, frankly, for a long time wasn't sort of cleaned up. I think we've been a lot more diligent in recent years in terms of following up with applicants and trying to close out projects. Um, forgive me, I have not had a chance to review this list before the meeting, so I didn't have any specific questions, but were there any projects in particular that anybody, aside from the questions Ed raised on
Well,
the
there's
Warner's
one.
Pond?
The first 2, stop scrolling, please. The first 2 at the which are regarding Giroux Park are 2 examples of having 0, 0, 0, 0, despite there being large grants. Maybe it's a mere matter of updating this, but there's some other examples later in the document. So that's what I was referring to when
Thank
I
you.
stated my
So
Do you
would
want me
those
to
be,
address that, or?
yeah, Anne, that would be great
Okay.
if you could.
Sure. Right, so the money has all been spent. So the grant award amount was 200,000, and then the beginning balance at the beginning of this fiscal year was 0 because all of the money has been spent. But they haven't closed it out since I think they're looking at as a larger project, and they haven't submitted a final report. So that's why it still appears on this sheet.
Thank you.
Okay.
And so it would probably be something that you would be pushing for in this year to get that closeout report.
That's right. Yes.
Okay,
There
there we go.
Yes. Mhm.
And so, and actually now that it's been a while since we've looked closely at one of these. I'm just thinking, so we had the ones from the first one, 2018. Wow. Gosh, time flies. I remember when, Sue, I'm sure you did when Mrs. Giroux passed away and we got going on that project. That was 2016 or so. That's been a long time.
Trivial other little question on this under status report, where it says Y spring. Is something getting cut off? Maybe that's FY spring?
Oh, I think the
Again.
previous person in my position had put a Y for yes, and then I just put a date
Oh.
next to it. So yeah.
Okay, confusing. Thanks.
I'll fix that.
You could back up to the one before this from just a moment, please. That reflects the Giroux.
Sorry, the page.
Oh, it's
before?
my eyesight is not brilliant, so I'm just trying to see what you were referring to.
Oh, so on the page with Giroux?
Yes. Oh, I see. There it is. Okay. She says squinting away here. Okay.
We've got that one. Is that correct? 910 Haywood Meadow Restoration Preservation.
Yes.
That's this year.
Well, no, it says fiscal year 12.
Oh, that's the stone wall that they did around the park.
So,
And they had to redo it.
Yeah,
So-
car ran into it.
so it being out there for 12 years, is that one that's overdue for closing out? It looks like they're still spending money on it. Is that the case? 12 years
Yes.
in?
Right. I remember last year, I think they asked for money for invasive removal. I think that was the 4,000. But right, that's a very old project.
Wow, so they've still got they've still got 14,000. Wow. So they just keep going. Okay.
Nice
Does
to get
anybody
an
else?
update on that one, wouldn't it? I think that's a prudent comment.
I mean, it's a, boy, it's a long running project. Uh, yeah. All right. If you want to keep scrolling in, and what I'm just looking for is these particularly, ones that are a bit long in the tooth. All these are pretty recent.
Well, there's a 19. Can we go back up to that one for just a minute? What is that? It's just come off the screen.
White
White-
Pond Slope
Right,
Restoration.
yeah.
So this is another one that's natural resources. They've still got some money going on, but I guess I
thought that was a completed project at White Pond.
I thought it was too. Now I can appreciate. I know that there's sort of ongoing work with signage, and I'm sure it's a an ever ongoing effort to keep the slope from being degraded, but um, it seems like that should be something that would be closed out.
I would think so too. I mean, when we've gone over to look at it, it seems to me that that part of it is a completed project.
Hmm.
It'd be
We,
nice.
I can ask
we,
about. Mhm.
we scrolled past something at the bottom of page 2. The last line is a project from 2015 and says one more to install August of 2022.
Right.
Yeah, drinking fountains.
I've checked in with them a number of times. I haven't checked in recently, but I'll be doing that.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Sorry.
Because I thought that last drinking fountain had been installed, but because I thought I went to the opening of it, but
Oh,
be nice.
maybe, yeah. So these just have to get closed out.
Yeah, I think that Minuteman Arc one is done for sure.
Mhm.
Other funds. Okay. All right. So just those couple of things for Delia, I guess check in on the status, in particular the 2012 the Haywood Meadow one. That would be great.
Yeah, I would also ask her about the old rifle range.
Me too.
Okay.
Yes. What's
It's
going
been-
on with that?
It's been there a long time too, well, 22, but no money spent.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
I saw that one and wondered too.
keenly needs it.
Oh, it does?
Well, I think so. I mean, I remember walking down that slope, and John, I'm sure you remember it, walking along it, and um, it's a very well used trail, and it's yeah. There have been actually a number of other trail improvements and additions in the rifle range that have happened, but that section, which is challenging and I guess would need to be, meet accessibility requirements, is just sort of languished. So it would be great to see that
What's happened there?
move forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the reminder, John. Okay. The next thing you've got on the agenda, Finance Committee public hearing on March 19th, 2024. Is that just to remind us that I need to be able to present the 2024 town meeting article?
Yes, and I've seen that on past agendas. I'm not sure if you typically discuss that, or I don't know if there's anything to discuss.
We just need to be there to support you. That's all.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Go. It's going to be straightforward. I'm going to go find Diane's presentation from last year. I'm going to update that. No, obviously I'll be there. I absolutely should be there. Let me just look at the 19th right now. March 19th. Yes, I will be there. Yeah, it'd be lovely to see folks that want to go to that. But our presentations are generally pretty straightforward and without much public comment. So hopefully
Yeah,
that's the case again this year.
One tip, Burton, is to look at who else is on that night. If it's something big, you might ask to be first.
Yeah.
That's good.
You mean if it's the schools or the,
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
go before the schools? I'll see if I can call in a favor with, well, I guess if it's FinCom, does Carmen run that meeting?
No,
No.
I don't,
Oh.
no.
Prashar will run that meeting.
I don't think I have any friends on FinCom. Oh, well.
Somebody's on this call who's a friend on FinCom. Carlin Reed's on FinCom. Yay, there she is. Carlin, you're going to enlighten us? Go ahead.
I think the schools, I don't know if you can hear me. Schools,
Yeah.
I think are scheduled for the March 7.
Right.
And I think on the 19th, it's just Minutemen, VOTEC, and you folks.
Okay,
Okay.
great. Well, maybe I'll squeeze, well, we'll see how that goes, but that doesn't sound like it would be terrible if I was before or after. All right, great. Thanks for that information, Carla. That then brings us to minutes. And reviewing of the minutes. And I know that some of these are maybe a little bit out of working memory, but one very small comment I had, and Sue, am I correct just going by the file names that you've already gone through these and made updates?
Wait a second. Did I miss something? An email again? I sent Ann edits at around 3 or 3:30 today, but I haven't received a new copy since then.
Well, I just pulled copies off the website.
Oh, maybe they've been posted to the web. I didn't look for that.
And I think the file path name that I saw for them included an SF, which I assumed was for Sue Felshaw.
Okay, yes, it's been updated and includes my nice little Picayune comments.
Okay, well, the only comment I had, and was in the reference to in the October 17th minutes, there was the discussion of the 250 trees initiative, which Krista Collins was presenting. And in the second paragraph, it says Ms. Grimwood encouraged Dr. Hunter to consider local nurseries. And while Dr. Hunter was on the call, I don't think she was, I think you meant to reference Ms. Collins there.
And actually, I think I need to correct the title for Ms. Grimwood, right? It should be Dr. Grimwood.
Yes.
So
Oh. Yes. So that was my only comment on both sets of minutes. Did anybody else have any further comments? Terrific. May I ask for a motion to approve both sets of minutes for what are the dates there? October, I moved away from my agenda. September 26th and October 17th.
I move that we accept the minutes.
Thank you, Diane.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ed. I'll take a vote. Let me start with Diane.
Yes.
Ed.
Aye, yes.
John.
Yeah, yes, but I was not there on the 17th, so I guess I should abstain about those.
Okay. You're welcome to, though, of course, you don't have to. I think we've, Eve.
Yes, please.
Sue.
Aye.
And I'm a yes, and for clarity, as revised by Sue, and with that one change that I suggested. And
I should have said that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I know what we all mean. Yeah.
As corrected by.
As corrected. Yeah. Okay. That brings us to the end of the minutes. It's not on the agenda, but do we have any public comment? I think we've heard from everybody who's not on the committee already.
From Linda, I always think it's valuable.
Yeah, Linda, do you any words of wisdom from the select board for us?
Good job as always. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Looks like from the Concord Bridge, we're going to be paying for and somebody's going to come to us next year and ask us to pay for a restroom at the football field. Didn't that seem to go over like a lead balloon at the select board? Okay, and is our next meeting is it in March before that FinCom meeting?
No, I don't think there is a meeting in March. I think it's
Okay.
only the FinCom meeting.
April
Right, the
20,
19th.
April 23rd.
All right, great. Well, hopefully I'll see some of you at the FinCom meeting in March. Otherwise, we'll see you April 23rd. I hope everybody has a nice Valentine's Day tomorrow. John, you've got a,
Well, Anne provided a really helpful list of the meetings all the way through December 10th.
okay. And when is town meeting? That's in April, right?
April 27th.
27th. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Wait,
April
29?
29th. 29th, 30th,
29th.
and I think maybe the 1st of May as well. I mean,
May Day.
Karen is prognosticating a longer than a shorter meeting. She thought it would be shorter, but maybe it won't be. So
All right. Well, I hope everybody has a nice Valentine's Day and enjoys this little bit of snow we have on the ground.
Thank you, Burton.
All right. And with that, we're adjourned. Thanks and have a good night.
Good
Right.
night.
Care.
good to see
Good
you.
night, Burton. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Night.